Welcome to this demo on output methods and output activities. In this demo, we use a project that we previously built from the video demonstration on input methods and input activities. Don't worry if you haven't built along, you can download the project attached before watching the video. Here, we'll add functionality for extracting transaction numbers from WI and learn how to use different output methods in automation projects to obtain the information that we need. At the end, we'll see a demonstration of how we can iterate through inputting data to the WI app, retrieve the transaction number for each entry, and write it back to an Excel sheet. We know output activities are used to extract data in general as text from a UI element. The output method is the technology behind output activities, which enables the extraction of data from UI elements. Let's open the previously built project. Here, we added activities to enter the data into the WI app. Next, we need to get the transaction number for the deposit transaction. So, let's add a getText activity. The getText activity is used to extract text from a specified element on the screen, such as a button or a label. It's an important activity for screen scraping and data extraction. Let's take a look at the properties of the getText activity before we configure it. The first property is target, which specifies the element on the screen from which the text will be extracted. The second property is the output, which specifies the variable where the extracted text will be stored. Now let's configure the getText activity. We'll first need to select the element on the screen from which we want to extract the text. In this case, it's a label with the text transaction number. In the Save To field, we'll specify the variable name that'll store the extracted text. It's important to note that the getText activity also has a scraping method property, which can be used to specify how the text should be extracted from the specified element. The default scraping method uses the first output method that returns a text after trying all possible output methods. The text attribute scraping method extracts the text from a specified attribute of the element. For example, if we want to extract the text from the value attribute of an input field, we'll set the scraping method to text attribute and specify the attribute name as value. The full text scraping method extracts the full text of the element, including its child elements. This method is useful when you want to extract the full text of a container element that contains multiple child elements. The native scraping method extracts text using the element's native properties. It allows formatting and retrieving the screen coordinates of the words by selecting the checkboxes for each of these features. Each of these comes with their own behavior and use cases. It's important to choose the appropriate scraping method based on our needs. For example, if you're trying to extract text from an input field, you'd likely use the default text attribute method. But if you're trying to extract text from a container element with multiple child elements, you'd use the full text method. Let's keep the default option for our demo. Next, we'll add a message box activity to display the transaction number. It's a simple and easy way to output information from the workflow. Time to see it in action. Let's run the project. And the message box shows the transaction number as expected. Great! Now for the final part of this demonstration, we want the project to read data from an Excel file. Enter deposit transaction data into the WI application, retrieve the transaction number, and write it to the corresponding Excel entry. For this, we'll add the read range workbook activity and configure it to read data from the transaction Excel file and save it to the data table. To enter the deposit transaction data for each row, let's add the For Each Row in Data Table activity and configure it for the saved data table. We already have the necessary activities to enter the data and retrieve the transaction number. So let's move these into the For Each Row in the Data Table activity. Let's add a Write Cell workbook activity to write the transaction number to the corresponding entry in the Excel sheet. Configure the activity by specifying the Excel sheet in which the data should be written, the variable that holds the transaction number, the sheet name, and the cell where the transaction number should be written. After every writing operation, it should move on to the next cell. This ensures that the data is written in the correct order and that the cells are not written over by mistake. To accomplish this, first we'll create a variable to store the current row number. This variable tracks which row in the Excel sheet should be filled in with the transaction number. We initialize this variable with 1 as the row in which we want to write in Excel. To specify the row number where the transaction number should be written, we use the increment variable in the Write Cell activity. We'll increment the row number variable by 1 using Assign activity. This will ensure that the next time the Write Cell activity is executed, the transaction number will be written to the next row in the Excel sheet. This will allow the activity to know exactly where to write the data, and the automation will work seamlessly. We're now ready to test the project. Let's run the workflow. It worked as expected. Great! This concludes our demo. Here are a few key takeaways. Output methods are a way to extract text from a UI element, including full text, native, OCR, and text attributes. The getText activity is used to extract the text from a UI element and store it in a variable. Using the scraping method property of the getText activity, you can specify how the text should be extracted from an element. Thank you for watching this demo. Happy automation!